The bipolar DM, Jason Caughtham. His show talks about Dungeons and Dragons, indie writing, and living with a mental illness, in particular bipolar disorder, borderline disorder, and major depression, among other diagnoses. Check us out right here on Saturdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, also on WLFE-DV.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. So take a seat, sit back, and get ready for the Bipolar DM.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bipolar DM Bipolar DM show. I got to get used to saying show and not podcast. This is a show about Dungeons and Dragons, independent writing, and living with a mental illness, in particular bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, and major depression, among other diagnoses. In today's show, we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder type 2 and borderline personality disorder. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, you can reach me by email at thebipolardm@gmail.com, or you can visit my webpage, www.thebipolardm.com, and there you'll find previous episodes of my podcast, my blog, as well as information and resources on mental illness, Dungeons and Dragons, and independent writing. Tonight's guest we're going to be talking about is Otis B. Dreads and T. Roy. Both of them, each of them have suffer from either bipolar disorder or borderline. One suffers from one suffers from the other. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And in tonight's show, also we'll be talking about my own struggles and my diagnosis with mental illness, and basically kind of how it affected my life. And so this is kind of a rough, sorry things are a little rough right now, so I'm still trying to get used to the new format. And for those of you who are fans of the show, we do have a fan page on Facebook. It's the handle is @TheBipolarDM. There you'll find more up-to-date information than my webpage, just because it's the easier platform for me to work from. And so I have articles, videos, and other information that I put up about Dungeons and Dragons and indie writing and mental illness. And also, if you're we have a group fan page. It's a private group page, free to join, and it's called The Bipolar DM Nation. And this is more a behind-the-scenes look at the podcast and how things are put together, as well as my daily life struggling with mental illness and what it's like living with that. Okay. Let's see. Banners. Okay. Let's just go into it about what borderline bipolar is and kind of how they have affected my life. When I was 22, I was doing my first tour duty in the Army as a combat medic at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. And when I was diagnosed first with borderline personality disorder, and leading up to that, I did not know what was going on. I thought I was going insane. I couldn't control my emotions. Things were just off the chart. I wasn't sleeping. I had some very poor coping mechanisms and habits that I was dealing with as well, especially with my spending habits and stuff like that. And basically what had happened was I was diagnosed with borderline, and that really ended my career in the military. And so I was put out, discharged with an honorable discharge. I was kind of screwed over by the military, by my command, because they just gave me an administrative discharge instead of giving me a medical discharge, which I should have received. But I was still able to get disability through the VA, and that's what I survive on each month is my VA disability, because I'm not able to hold a job or to really take care of myself half the time sometimes, just because of the nature of my illness. The struggle I had was especially with accepting my diagnosis. It was real tough, especially the first couple of years. I was not on medication. I was trying to live med free. I wanted to get back into the military. I was asking and I was begging the VA to reconsider my diagnosis, which they refused flat out to do. I mean, they wouldn't even consider it, even talking about it. And that's one of the things I have problems with the VA is that they don't take things off your record if it's incorrect. I have 11 diagnoses, oh, no, 7 diagnoses right now. And probably a quarter of them don't even apply to me, but I'm stuck with them because they're in the VA system and they're part of my records now. So in addition to borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder type 2, I also have major depression, which kind of goes hand in hand with borderline and bipolar, so it's kind of redundant, but I've been diagnosed with that as well as ADHD, seasonal affective disorder. What else they got me? Comorbid with substance abuse. So that kind of blacklisted me because they found out I smoked pot, and that blacklisted me on narcotics with the VA system. So it doesn't matter whether it's legal in the state or not, or if it's helpful or beneficial. According to federal law, it's a Schedule 1 drug, and it's basically bars you from ever receiving narcotics from the VA system, which really sucks because fortunately I don't have chronic pain, but when I do have pain, sometimes it's only the narcotics that helps me get through the day, and not having access to those anymore really sucks, but hey, it is what it is. So I was diagnosed first with borderline and then later diagnosed with bipolar type 2. And it was a really tough pill to swallow when it came to that. Med compliance was not even on the radar for me. I wasn't taking my meds. I wasn't even wanting to take meds. And the havoc that this mental illness wreaked on my life was insurmountable because I lost, first I lost my military career. Then I lost, after I graduated from college, I went to seminary, and then I started a church for bikers. And unfortunately, that fell apart thanks to my diagnosis and my illness. And so now I've 2 careers behind me, and now I'm looking at a third, and I don't even know how this is going to go. Hopefully I'll be able to maintain this and keep up with the radio program. But yeah, it's been real tough dealing with mental illness and dealing with living with this stuff. It took me, like I said, it took me several years to accept my diagnosis. And when I finally did, I don't want to say it was it wasn't revolutionary or anything like that by no means, but finally accepting my diagnosis was a big step for me into starting to take meds and get therapy and help and all those things that you need in order to take care of yourself. For those of you who are not familiar with the term borderline or with bipolar type 2, just to kind of give you the quick definition of borderline, it's also known as emotionally unstable personality disorder, which actually I think is a more accurate description of the illness than borderline, because unfortunately borderline, the word itself, indicates that you're kind of halfway between one thing or the other, which is not true with this diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. It is a very distinct and separate diagnosis among other personality disorders, and it has a long-term pattern of unstable relationships, distorted self-image, strong emotional reactions. These often engage in those affected, like me, have engaged in self-harm, such as cutting and other mutilation. We also struggle with feeling with emptiness and abandonment and attachment for reality, and anything can really trigger us. And it's a really tough illness to live with. And about 10% of people affected with this disorder die by suicide. And what's really sucks about it, this disorder is often stigmatized by both the media and the psychiatric field. I can understand the media not understanding the illness, but the psychiatrist and psychologist that you run into and having problems with people, not even wanting to deal with people with borderline is mind blowing. And fortunately, I've not run into this personally, but there are people out there that have problems getting therapists or getting a psychiatrist who is willing to take on somebody who has borderline just because medications is not a frontline treatment for it. Now, medications help treat other symptoms, but treatment for borderline, kind of falls back into therapy, cognitive and behavioral therapy, and other types of therapy, group therapy, one-on-one therapy, psychoanalysis, and so it's a very difficult illness to treat. Oh, good, we got T-Royd and Otis on. Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and bring Otis on, and we got T-Royd in the back, so he'll be coming on at the bottom half of the hour. Hey, guys. All right, add the stream. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a very slow day today, kind of counting the hours until the show started.
There you go. That's how it always is, man. I'm doing the same thing myself.
Yeah. So, all right. So, you personally suffer from borderline personality disorder, correct?
Yes.
And when you were diagnosed, how old were you when you were originally diagnosed with this illness?
I'm going to say it's probably about mid-20s. It's only been about 20 years now since I've gotten the diagnosis.
Yeah, it's about the same for me too. When was it that you started noticing things were off, not quite adding up?
That actually was probably anywhere from 5 to 10 years prior to the diagnosis, and of course, as you probably mentioned in your opening there, misdiagnosed with bipolar. And which is very easy to do. So yeah, I would probably say things were not really right. Right before you brought me on, you were mentioning borderlines that cut, self-harm, things of that nature. That it was those kinds of things that started creeping in, and I started participating in, which gave me the first clue and others around me that something's not right here.
Yeah, and that was what happened with me too, especially the self-harm and the mutilation was the big thing. I got scars all over me from cutting and stuff like that. I got lots of tattoos like you do as a coping mechanism to avoid cutting. And so my artwork really does express my mental illness and my faith and everything else too. So I'm very proud of my tattoos. I was a tattoo artist for several years myself, and
Awesome.
I had quit because of lithium. I had the lithium shakes.
Yep.
But
yep,
yeah.
I've been prescribed lithium, and that is not a fun medication to have to endure. At least from my personal experience. Some people it may work. Everybody's different when it comes to medication.
Yeah, especially with meds. Meds, everybody is different. Higher dose, I was at a high dose, and that was just wrecking my life.
Yeah.
Now, since then, I had gotten the 2 doctors back had reduced my medication list by a lot. So I'm now down to 3 psychiatric medications plus meds for sleeping and stuff like that. But as far as like my regular routine, I'm down to 3, which is better than 11. I was on 11 medications. I had like 14 contraindications because they just kept piling medication on me, on and on and on, not taking anything off. And so,
absolutely.
And unfortunately, with a lot of docs, that's kind of how they treat us in the psychiatric field, is that they just pile us with medicine and send us on our way.
Yeah, because I mean, you're basically almost a guinea pig, because this is one of those mental illnesses that is it's quite stigmatized still. It's not really all that I guess understood, well known in the psychiatric community, and I think I heard you mention as well before I came on the problems that those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder have getting really adequate therapy and finding a licensed therapist that can do such things as dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is usually the go-to versus meds, as I believe you also alluded to.
Right.
Because this is kind of a just a learning how to live again, and having that. And I think you said it perfect. And I've heard other doctors and whatnot describe it that way. It's a emotional instability type disease, I guess you could say, disorder. Emotional regulation is very hard. There's a lot of ups and downs, very different from bipolar, where that could last sometimes weeks, whereas with borderlines, we'll go from rock bottom to cloud 9 2-3 times a day sometimes. Versus over a long period where there's just an intense, long drawn out low, as in bipolar, and then intense highs that are just as equally as dangerous. So, yeah, it's and as far as the medication, I was on at one time 5 different medications, taking a total of about 9 pills a day, and the the effects of those pills were absolutely devastating.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about side effects. What sucks about the personality disorder with borderline is that medication is not a go-to. Unfortunately, it can treat some of the symptoms, or if you're comorbid with other diagnosis, you would have medication. But because the diagnosis is so misunderstood, and even among the psychiatric community, but also nobody really knows how to treat it. They're finding out only in recent years that, like I said, like you had said, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which for those of you who are not familiar with those, these are therapies types that affect or change the way you think and perceive the world around you. And we're going to go into some of the symptoms of borderline in just a minute and discuss some of those, because a lot of them feed right into our day-to-day struggle with this illness. And probably one of the first ones is the fear of abandonment, number one. And that affects our relationships, it affects our friendships, it affects work. I mean, it's just terrible.
Oh, yeah. Fear of abandonment is one of the things that I think is a really it's that one common thread that I believe goes through a lot of borderlines, at least. And I've met a handful of those that have been diagnosed as borderline, and that is always one of them. That fear of abandonment. That as you mentioned, that is just, completely devastating, especially in your interpersonal relationships, which is actually number 2 on this list. And these are this is like the 9 points that psychiatrists, psychologists, they'll look at to determine whether or not you fit that criteria. And speaking of interpersonal relationships, the unstable relationships, because they tend to be intense and short-lived. There are some of us, like myself, who's been with my wife for about 23 years, married 20. But before that, yes, there was a lot of intense relationships. There was a lot of jealousy, which I think is kind of hand in hand with that fear of abandonment. I'm assuming possibly you as well has had issues with just unstable relationships, because we are as the borderline are unstable ourselves and who we are, and what we have to offer in a relationship. Yeah,
and that's one of the toughest things right there. Dealing with that, because little things can set us off. Right now I would like to. I don't want to say pursuing, but I'm interested in a particular individual right now that I'm trying to date. This particular person sucks at texting. I mean, she does not text back. She texts back a day later, stuff like that. It was a lot to get over that, wondering and questioning and second guessing and everything like that. Because it wasn't that I was getting mixed signals. It was just that I'm not getting clarification. kind of stuff is what it is.
and
right
you know
into the
that's
unstable relationships where.
right, and that's the thing with again going back to the first one, the fear of abandonment. You know, you feel like, oh great, they're not texting me back. They're home late. They're late from work or whatever. Oh, they must be with somebody else, or there's always those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Going on in our heads. So something so little, it's not always like, oh, you feel like, this person's going to leave you or they want a divorce. It's not always that, tragic and that big
Yeah.
of a deal on that scale. It could be something like you mentioned, just not having a text back, not getting a call back. And yeah, that, I mean, just something so little, you're right, can just, set you off.
Yeah, and then that again feeds right into the unstable relationships and stuff like that because
Hmm.
unfortunately I know with myself personally I tend to get attracted to other messed up people. It almost seems like I kind of feel like I'm not worthy of being in a normal relationship and that the only
Yeah.
people that would be interested in me is somebody else who's just as messed up as I am.
Right.
and
Right.
and so that feeds right back into the unstable relationships because then it's hard enough when one person in the relationship is having problems, but when both people in the relationship are having problems, I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster.
It really is, as much as you may think of a person, if they are not stable within their own mental health, and then you add it to you get two borderlines together, or just a borderline and any other unstable type mental health. Yeah, it is. It's probably not going to end very well. I mean, I hate to be a negative Nancy there, but that's probably more than likely
Reality
it's
of it,
not.
though, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reality. Exactly. And now going into the third thing, which is unclear and shifting self-image. That's the one thing that we do have also too is not really knowing who we are,
Hmm.
because our emotional base is so up and down. We don't know who we are day to day. We view ourselves sometimes as evil or unworthy or
Hmm.
less than human. And so dealing with that in the shifting self-image, and it's not stable. That's the other thing too. Like everything else in the bipolar life, nothing is stable and nothing is static. So
Right.
even even how we look at ourselves shift from whether you're hypomanic right at the moment and you think yourself as the next greatest thing, or if you're just bashing yourself left and right throughout the
Hmm.
day. So that's unstable self-image. Really, I mean, I'm my own worst enemy, and
I've
sitting
always
down
said that.
and
Likewise.
being yeah, and being alone is one of the worst things for me to do because I'm left alone with my own thoughts and
Hmm.
my own instability, and so
Yeah.
it's just terrible to do, but you got to learn to live with it. I mean, that's the thing about
Exactly.
it.
And the thing with the the shifting or unclear self image is that also, I think, it feeds, these all interlock together. I've noticed,
Hmm.
at least most of them do, because this one goes all the way back to the first one,
Hmm.
the fear of abandonment. If you don't think highly enough of yourself to take and realize that, hey, I'm worthy of being loved and a relationship pursued with, then you're always going to feel like this person is going to leave you because you're not worthy. You don't know who you are. And right along with that, a lot of people will take and go those drastic measures, and they will change just out of the blue. Some people change their names,
Hmm.
and then a little bit on the lighter side, maybe their appearance, hairstyles. I was 40 years old, decided, hey, I'm going to get dreads. People get teased me. They said, well, what are you having, like a midlife crisis or something? No, I just always kind of wanted it. Bam, there it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was, directly linked to, one of my, just changing and not realizing who I am. It's very possible. I'm not ruling it out. But yeah, that can be very hard to live with too. And somebody is just, I love myself. I'm doing really good in life too. Oh man, I hate myself. What am I doing this for? I'm a failure, and that can go two, three
Yeah.
times, throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, just even coming up today with the radio program, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's going to suck. I don't like,
Hmm.
I'm going to be a failure at it. I mean, so dealing with that is really, it really does suck. And you're correct in your assessment that everything interlocks because it goes again, that shifting, unclear self-image goes also into impulsive and self-destructive behavior because we're
Hmm.
not stable in ourselves, and so we tend to do self-sabotage, self-fulfilling prophecies. So basically, she's going to leave me, so I'm going to make it everything, basically make that happen.
Hmm. Yeah.
We
Right.
tend to
Right.
catastrophize and make things happen and make a
Hmm.
self prophecy and those things, and then going into impulsiveness. I mean, my bank account is just a wreck. I get paid once a month for disability, and by day 4, I'm out of money. So I blow
Hmm.
through money crazy. But all my bills are paid for, my rent's paid for, so I take care of all that shit beforehand. But I don't have, I'm borrowing money and going to the
Right.
pawn shop, buy groceries, the rest of the month.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely been there, and I mean, that is, I mean, there's so many things under that umbrella of self-destructive behaviors. It could be, just a risky sex life,
Mm-hmm.
shoplifting, driving all nuts, drugs, alcohol, things of those nature, and then that once again ties right into the next one, because then we get in, we're still sticking with almost a self-destructive behavior, no doubt, but the next one on the list would be self-harm, and of course that's pretty self-explanatory. I think you did mention before I came on, which I wanted to bring this up real quick, when it comes to self-harm and suicide ideology and thoughts and things of that nature. You were correct. Between 8 and 10% of people with borderline will complete suicide. But what's even more, I think, devastating is that 70% of people with borderline personality disorder will make at least one suicide attempt in their lifetime. That number, even though it's just said to be at least one. That's not saying
Yeah.
it was just one. It could have been many more. 70% of those with borderline, have to deal with that. The rate of 8 to 10% is 50 times higher, okay, in suicide than the general population. That's absolute. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
And so that is something, one of those, again, common threads that I think go through those with borderline. That would be the self-harm.
Okay. Yeah, self harm is a big thing. Extreme emotional swings. Oh my God, that's what I hate. It's like
Hmm.
a day going from depression to laughing, crying, angry, back to happy, all in a span of an hour. This is not
Hmm.
like over a course of weeks or months. This is my typical day
Right.
dealing with
Right.
dealing the unstable, and that's that again. Everything is unstable, and that's why I like the other term, emotionally unstable personality disorder, more than borderline, because
I do
borderline's
too.
more is very deceptive.
Yeah, it's very
And
vague too. You don't really know what you're dealing with.
yeah, because the term the definition of borderline itself, it means something that's halfway, like
Right.
halfway psychotic, halfway
Hmm.
this, halfway that, and there's nothing halfway about it. I don't know where or who came up with this idiot idea of calling it borderline, but
Yeah.
and when I first had it, I'm like, borderline what?
I thought
Because
I
you're
thought
always
the
waiting.
same exact thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because you're wondering what the other, because it's always been borderline this, borderline
Hmm.
that.
Yep.
So dealing with that, it just sucks. And so we got these swings of the ups and downs, and then also the chronic feeling of emptiness and just no purpose. And a lot of that feeds in from your life,
Yeah.
especially if you're on disability and not able to work, because without a purpose in your life, whatever it may be, I mean, you're lost.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
there's your self identity, and self image. If you have a purpose in life, well, you kind of, attach to that purpose, and that gives you a self image. Without that purpose, you have no self image.
yeah, and so, so we're going through highs, we're going through lows, we got feelings of emptiness, we also got explosive anger.
Hmm.
That one, oh God, I hate that one the most, I think.
Me
Well,
too.
right, the second one that I hate the most is the crying. Just crying
Yeah.
at a drop of the hat, whether it's a
Hmm.
commercial or whatnot. is tough. But the explosive anger is the one that really gets to me a lot, especially among friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
or when I'm just by myself,
Right.
and going off, talking to myself, going off on an imaginary person or a person I'd like to have a conversation with and strangle at the same time, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay, we got about a minute left, so let's go into the last one, which is number 9, feeling suspicious or out of touch reality. Now, this one here kind of doesn't happen so much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but it does happen, which is that disconnect from reality, that feeling of, I would say, not being real.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
I have a very hard time accepting myself as a human being human, because I don't feel like a human being.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I get that as well. I mean, also paranoia or suspicious thoughts always, tend to creep
Yeah.
in. That's about the one out of that last one that I relate to the most.
Yeah. And yeah, the paranoia and all that, feeling foggy, a lot of spaced out outside of your body. That
Hmm.
one's a hard one to tell, especially because a lot of medication side effects give you that sensation of being out of your body or not being quite all there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, before we tie this up, I want to go ahead and let you get a shout out real quick about your show. You got that coming up in just a little bit, right? Getting ready to broadcast
Yeah,
for that.
absolutely. Yeah, we do on Saturday nights, 8, just after here in about a half an hour. We do a little social hour over there at Psycho Bunny Death Cult and Psychomanium 13 on their Facebook pages. And we just we talk about some off the wall type stuff, a little different than our normal podcast over at nightlivingdreads.com. There's more your horror, true crime, serial killer type discussions, and yeah, new episodes drop every Wednesday. Spotify and Stitcher, we're also on. So I appreciate the shout out. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Great show. I've listened to it several times. I love the information that you're putting out there,
Thank you.
especially when you're getting into the serial killers and the true crime and stuff like that. And what I like about your show is you don't focus on the death and destruction and dismemberment, but more of the stuff that's going on around it, the people
Sure.
that are affected by it, and
Absolutely.
all that stuff, and how that affects society as a whole. And that's what I really like about your show. You're not galvanizing and really glorifying
Right.
the gore and stuff like
No.
that.
Right.
You're
Right.
avoiding
Thank
that,
you.
but you're still talking about something that's a very sensitive topic, but with a bit of sense of humor too. Because if you can't
Absolutely.
laugh about it, some of this stuff, you just go insane.
Yeah,
So
you got that right. Some of the things we do talk about is pretty horrible and brutal. So we try to lighten it up a little bit.
yeah. All right, man. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. We're going to go ahead and go to
Hey,
a commercial break, and then we'll pick up T. Roy after that. Thank you so much, Otis.
hey,
You have
thank
a
you,
good
man.
one.
You
All right. I'll
too.
talk with you later.
Take care.
Peace out. All right. And welcome back. We have with us today T. Roy. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing very well right now. So actually, now that most of the day's over and the boredom's lifted.
Right, right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So now you yourself, you have bipolar disorder. Now, is it type 1 or type 2?
Type 1.
Type 1. Okay, so you have a type 1 disorder. I have type 2. And Now, it was formerly called manic depression, and it's a mental condition that causes extreme mood swings like borderline does with emotional highs and lows. Now, the difference between type 1 and type 2 is the manic areas. And in type 2, we have what's called hypomanic, where we don't quite go so high as the type 1 does and not as destructive. But it still causes a lot of problems in relationships and finances and stuff like that. And it just, like the way I like to describe the difference between bipolar and borderline is that if you think of your brain as a computer, bipolar is the hardware, is affecting the hardware. So like you have a crack in the hard drive. While borderline is the software that you run, and that's a bug in the software. And to have both of those like I do, it sucks. I mean, it sucks bad enough just having it as it is, but to have both of them, wow.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were diagnosed initially?
Well, I was diagnosed about 11 years ago. And I kind of needed that whenever I was around 18. So years before then, I should have went in. I just didn't make it into the doctor. I wasn't diagnosed or anything like that. I just lived with it and dealt with it until 10 years ago, a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and so what was it that kind of brought you around to accepting your diagnosis instead of avoiding it?
Life. I'm married, so I try not to put it off on who I'm married to, but it's so easy to do so. So I basically put myself into a show of myself on WLFE DB-DB. And so I put myself in that, and then I kind of put myself out into the public. Like, I was really depressed for 10 years, and that was basically it. Like, it really almost destroyed me because I just didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to accept it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And so just the thought of having something like that, it really scared me, and it kind of dug deep into me, and I fell into a hole, and I just got tired of that hole and decided to put myself out there and find people to kind of fulfill what I needed to deal with it and accept it.
Now, when you did finally accept your diagnosis, how was it? I mean, as far as emotionally, was it like, I mean, for me, it was kind of like acceptance and finally coming to peace with myself and who I am. I mean, did you kind of find a similar thing when you were diagnosed?
Yeah. Whenever I was diagnosed, it really kind of changed who I was, because I lived for being healthy, because I was born and raised around, unhealthy family members, and just there was a lot of that going on. So all my life, I told myself I was not going to become ill. I was not going to come, get anything to where I had to take anything for it or anything like that. And that kind of just blew up because there was other things that added to the whole bipolar that, it just really went crazy. So it really messed me up on who I thought I was, because I wasn't the same anymore. I was different. I was diagnosed.
So when was your, if you don't mind me asking, when was your last manic episode?
That was about a week ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I didn't notice. I'm sorry. I noticed you were kind of upbeat, but I didn't really realize that you were manic at the time, because I was going through my own hypomanic state myself. So it was kind of hard to notice those things in other people sometimes.
Yeah, I lived most of my life hiding my pain, hiding my aggression, hiding my everything. I hid everything. And so whenever I came 10 years ago diagnosed, and then, I just started trying to find myself and, revamping myself and remaking myself to where I could understand who I was and try to push that back. A week ago, I went to Walmart, and there was I went down a laying, and there was like people just it was like bombarded me, and I was like literally freaked me out. I had to like leave. I had to go sit in the car, and then I kind of snapped at my husband, and kind of went off on him, and I went off on myself. Like it went downhill so quick. I felt just worthless, and like so I felt like I was a piece of shit, and that I wasn't worthy of anything. I wasn't ever gonna do anything with myself. That what I'm into now, am I good enough? I don't think I'm good enough. So it's like it was hard to deal with that on top of everything else. I have an ill mother, and my brother's ill. Just there's a lot of stuff in my life, and it felt like everything just came to a boil as soon as those people started coming in and taking my oxygen, and just
sucked the life right out of you.
That it does.
Yeah, and the thing about triggers, that's the thing that sucks a lot about our illness, is that we got triggers that we know about, but then we also have triggers that we don't know about.
Don't know about whatsoever.
Yeah, that was until they happen. Such as going down a Walmart aisle and then getting bombarded by a crowd of people,
It came out of nowhere, and I just, oh my God. It scares me because at that moment in time, I don't feel like I have control of myself, and I don't realize what I'm doing. So that's why I try to remove myself, and then, I start meditating and getting into my head, and, getting out of my head, but getting into my head. It's like kind of weird, but
yeah. Oh, I understand completely what you mean, though. And that actually feeds right into my next question, which is, what do you do for self-care?
Self-care, I am on prescriptions. I take about 12 a day, and then I meditate. Like, I was on a bunch of doses of my prescriptions, but I've cut them way under half because I started getting into more walking and putting myself into my jobs, the things that I like to do. I like to go hiking. I like to get out and near water and trees, and dirt just really purifies and puts everything back into me that I need. So I try to just stay busy and deal with it.
Well, you're lucky that you live next to a little body of water, though, with where you're at
I
there.
know.
It's a floodplain.
Yeah, I know, right? And it helps tremendously because that's where I usually go as I sit near the creek. And I just, empty my head and just listen to nothing but the water flowing over the rocks and the sounds of the trees, blowing in the wind. And, I try to find certain things because I hate taking prescriptions whatsoever. I hate it. I just cannot stand pills. And, most of the time, sometimes I feel most of the time, doctors aren't really doctors. They just, here, let's try this. And then
false surgery.
For a couple of weeks, and then, it's not working. So let's either up it or let's try this one. And then, it's like,
then you got to come off. Then you got to come off the meds, and then you got to go back on meds. Yeah, I mean, I've been dealing with that for over 20 years myself until they finally found a cocktail of medication that worked for me. And it took 20 years for it to happen.
Yeah.
That's what sucks so much about this illness, is that everybody's so different chemically. I mean, I tolerate lithium pretty well, and most people, a lot of people don't. And at higher doses, I don't handle it so well. I get the shakes real bad and stuff like that. But at lower doses where I'm at now, it's done tremendous great work for me in helping with my mood stabilization.
That's good.
No, but not perfect. But but medication, of course, is not a silver bullet. It is not the only thing that you gotta do. Like what I mentioned, like with self-care, you mentioned meditation, exercise, stuff like that. What about other support? We talked about this off air, like with NAMI, the National Institute of Mental Illness. In our area, there's a little office in the hospital that nobody ever is at, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of support for us with bipolar in this community.
There's not, and there's not really much support for anything else that leads into making you bipolar, helping you be bipolar. There's nothing to help us fulfill that to even try to not be as bipolar as we are. If
Yeah.
If there's a chance that we could fix and not be bipolar, I would want to not be bipolar.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, I'd give up just about everything just
I'd
to.
rather shove,
do
I'd rather shove pills down your throat than to actually try to put things together that is actually going to help you, without the prescriptions.
Yeah. Okay. Now, an unfortunate thing with people like us with bipolar is that our divorce rate and separation rate is about 90%. How the hell have you lasted so long?
Well, yes, this
You're going on 15 years, aren't you?
yes, this year will make it 15. He is totally a brick wall sometimes. And for me, I think you got to be a brick wall whenever I'm going into my thing. When we first got together, he didn't know how to, deal with me whenever it came down to stuff, because he didn't know how to deal with me. He's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm all like in a corner, bawling my eyes out over something that I don't even freaking know what the hell I'm bawling my eyes out for, feeling like I'm just going fucking crazy. And he's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I finally, I sat down after an episode and, I told him, I was like, babe, just be there. Hold me. Like, tell me it's going to be okay. Tell me, put good things, but put good thoughts in my head. Try to change what I'm thinking. Because this first comment is what I think. Boom. It just arrives. And I don't even know that it's coming. And so, I need you to help me change that. So just hold me, and tell me it's going to be all right, and caress my hair, or, just be there and, get my mind off of it. Take me on a walk. If I'm able to walk at that moment in time, take me on a walk, take me outside, take me somewhere to where it's not the same area that I'm already in, because it's already tainted with whatever's going on with me at that moment in time. So I need to change that,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about with recognizing on self-care is a change in environment, where you recognize that you've got to change your environment if you're going off, if you're triggered or whatnot. You need to change, even if it is just changing rooms, just getting somewhere else.
Right. And if you're with somebody and they tell you that, they love you or whatever, try to help them understand by explaining what's going on in your head at that moment of time, because I think that's what has helped me and Kevin so many years is, we're open with each other, at that moment of time. I'm like, I'll tell you later, because I don't know, so I'm snappy. I'm a bitch. I'm
processing,
processing everything, and that comes in and it just makes it worse. So I'm like, and I'm all like, just give me 10 minutes, give me 5 minutes. And then, and then from then on, he would ask me questions, and he still does. Like at first he wouldn't, and now he does. I'm like, ask questions. If you feel something that needs to be asked, ask me, because I don't know. I don't know what's going on in your head. I don't hear you. I don't hear your thoughts. So, I need you to communicate with me so we can work through this, because it has came in between us a couple of times. But, that's marriage. That's a relationship. You're going to have things that's going to come in there. And if you're bipolar, be understanding enough to where you want to be there for the other person that is going through that at the moment in time, and look up information. Go to different people that knows more information than you do at that moment in time. Try to learn so you're still going to be there for the one that you love.
Yeah, and then that kind of goes into my next question, which is, what about giving support to our caregiver / partner? That's one thing that, not a lot is known about bipolar, and what is known about it is, really a lot of misinformation. Yes. But what's forgotten is the other half of the equation, which is our partners.
Yes.
And what they need, because unfortunately, they didn't sign up for becoming our caregiver, but that's part of the role that they play in our relationship. And so, what kind of support would you like to see happen for caregivers / partners?
Well, like I just said, just be open with each other, communicate with each other. Don't be so snappy. Try to understand. Don't not understand. it's going to happen, and if you don't understand, then make yourself try to understand. Don't look at it as, oh, well, I don't understand, so fuck it. I don't have to deal with it. That's, whatever. Don't do that. Be all like, hey, like I said, ask questions. If you don't know, look up information. Talk to the person that you're with, because communication is number one in anything, I believe. And, we knew that and know that, and we were, checked each other and said, hey, you're being a bitch, or hey, you're being an ass, or, hey, this is what's going on in my head at this moment in time. I think stupid shit like, running my car off of a cliff or in front of a diesel or just out of nowhere. And, I'm like, babe, I'm kind of thinking this. So, he's like, oh, well, let's not think that and let's think this. And,
direct.
Try to put stuff in there to where you really want to help the other person that is going through bipolar or depression or anxiety or anything like that. Just totally be open with each other.
Yeah, and I would say that would lead into my second thing, which I would say is don't take it personally as a caregiver /
Absolutely not. Like when at that moment in time that everything's going on, don't take it personal, because we don't know at that moment in time what the hell we're doing or saying or what's going on. Like literally.
Or have no control over it.
No control whatsoever, because you're trying to do everything at once, and you just lose yourself. And just try to understand each other and understand that they need you.
So key to this, and really with any mental illness, is communication.
Yes.
And also not taking it personally, even when we lash out.
No.
Which is an unfortunate thing that we do, is that we will lash out to those that are closest to us, not personally, but we will. And it does feel personal when we do it.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got a couple minutes left before we tie this up. I want to go ahead and plug your show. You have your show, which is on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. or is it 8:30?
It is 9 o'clock. It's from 9
Eastern.
and 30. And yes, it is every Thursday, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock Eastern. Everything yet nothing. And it's totally about everything yet nothing. And I bring all kinds of stuff, all kinds of people, arts, crafts, actors, actresses, musicians, singers, you name it.
You also take on some hard topics too, especially within the LGBTQ community.
Yes. As you can tell,
yeah,
I'm a supporter because I am gay, and I am totally there for the LGBTQ plus and everybody else, because I think everybody's needs to be treated equally and with respect. We have a good time, we shoot the shit, and we laugh our asses off, and we try to like bring everything in, so there's a mix of everything, to where if you don't like one show, next show could be possibly the one that you like. Because
that's the one thing I like about your show, is because it's so different every single one. Because like was not last week, but the week before, you had a director / actor / writer on.
Yes.
Fantastic interview. And then of course last week's show was great. So it was, you had some awesome guests. You talked about some great subjects. You don't pull any punches either, which is really nice too. But you do it in a loving manner. You're not a dick about it, but you're not afraid to take on those hard topics like suicide and discrimination and violence, stuff like that.
I live it. I've lived it. And, that is something else that I try to point towards, and I'm trying to change that. And I want people to feel better about certain things, like suicide is really a shitty thing. And, it's so hard because the person don't know what's going on, kind of like bipolar. And, it's like they don't have anybody there. They're just completely by themselves, and they feel worthless. And so they take it upon themselves.
Yeah.
I don't want other people to have to go through that. And if I could save somebody else's life by saying, hey, that's not good, it's not going to save or solve anything, you're just not going to be here anymore. And if you are, then you're not going to be the same. You're going to be worse.
Yeah. And anyways, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed having you on. I'd like to have you on. Come on again, especially if we can
Yes.
get Kevin on, because I'd love to talk with him about the other half of the equation, which is the caregiver/partner and
Yes.
what they go through. And there's a couple other people I'd like to talk to also as well, and get them on board the next time we have a chance to do that. So we'll have to make some schedule arrangements for Kevin, because I know he works Saturdays. So,
Yes.
and I don't want to try and do a pre-recorded show just because, I don't know. I don't trust technology right now. So,
No, I know. Totally. And yes, that is Everything Yet Nothing on WLFE-DB.com or at Everything Nothing on Facebook. T-Roy. Hope to see you there.
all right. Thank you so much. And you have a great one. I'll talk with you later.
You too, bud.
All
Have
right.
a good night.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Great show. I was a little nervous coming in as far as how this was going to work out, but thank you so much, T-Roy. Thank you so much, Otis, for coming on and discussing these hard topics. If you or a loved one does suffer from a mental illness such as bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, depression, or any other mental illness, remember that don't take it so personally when they lash out at you. I mean, yes, it can be very personal because they know you and they know your buttons. And unfortunately, when you're hurting, it's very easy to make other people hurt around you. And so as a caregiver/partner, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever you are with that person's life, be sure to, be understanding, learn about the illness, learn about what's going on, and be open and communicate with them too. Even if it's hard stuff to talk about, like suicide and thinking about suicide. I mean, a lot of us don't want to talk about, I'm thinking about driving off a cliff or driving in front of a semi truck or something like that. We don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, and we don't want to hear about it. But it's a reality of what's going on in our head right now. And it's so important to discuss issues and topics when it comes to mental illness, and to share with each other, what's going on in your head. Even if you don't particularly or fully understand everything that's going on, be sure to at least take that time to, at least listen. I mean, T-Roy had given some great advice as far as what a caregiver/partner should do, which is just be there. You don't have to have the answers. You don't even have to know what's going on, but just be there, hold them, tell them you love them, comfort them, do all those things that, will help soothe them and help take their mind off them, get them out of their head and back into reality. And, and as a caregiver, as a partner, you have so much influence in helping somebody else out. And so I want to thank everybody for showing up. And again, we are on live Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Central. Next week, we're going to have Tank on from Backblast Canine to discuss psychiatric service dogs in particular, but also service dogs in general, and what they are, what they're not, and all that's included with them. All right. Thank you again for tuning in. And remember, everybody, take your meds.
Thank you for listening to the Bipolar DM. They love sharing thoughts and ideas. See you next week, 7 p.m. Saturdays on WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows, and that makes for great talk radio. WLFE Digital Broadcast Network is on TV. You can watch all of our shows on WLFE-DB.com. Check out our channels: Paranormal View for all of your paranormal type shows, LGBTQ Friends for all of our LGBTQ shows, Variety Unlimited for all other shows. It runs 24/7 right on WLFE-DB.com. You'll even catch the lives, all in one place. Never miss an episode, past or future. WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.